Hello, friend, and welcome to the Sleepy Meteorologist. Tonight, we're slipping gently into the soft, secret world of fog. That quiet, silvery veil that settles over rooftops and wraps the earth in a hush. Outside, the world may still be turning, but here, in this calm corner of the night, you've found a slower rhythm, one where even the clouds seem to whisper. Maybe your day has been long, or your mind is still buzzing with thoughts that refuse to rest. It's okay. You've arrived. Right on time. What time is it for you now? Late evening? Early morning? Whatever the hour, this is your moment to exhale. If you enjoy these gentle meteorology journeys, feel free to like or subscribe. It helps more sleepy travelers find their way through the mist. But for now, let your shoulders drop. Let your eyes grow heavy. There's nothing you need to do, nothing you need to fix. Just let the science of the skies carry you. Softly, slowly, sleepily. Let's begin. As night deepens, the world cools and quiets. The last warm colors of daylight have faded, leaving behind a soft indigo sky stretched over rooftops and fields. Shadows grow long, and the rustling of leaves begins to hush. Even the wind seems to tiptoe. The world, it seems, is holding its breath, and in this stillness, something begins to stir. Fog doesn't rush in like a storm. It doesn't knock or call attention to itself. It arrives slowly, subtly, gracefully. It begins where you might not notice, along the edges of fields, at the base of gentle hills, on the glassy surface of a quiet road. One moment, the air is empty. The next, it seems to shimmer. The ground, having absorbed sunlight all day, now releases that heat in faint, invisible wisps. As the earth exhales, the air above it cools just enough for something delicate to happen. The moisture in the air, once hidden and unseen, begins to show itself. Tiny droplets form, so small they float rather than fall. And so the fog begins. It does not descend like a curtain, but rises like a sigh. It gathers not from above, but from within, from the air itself, growing denser and softer, until the night becomes a dream you can walk through. Streetlights take on halos, trees blur at their edges. The familiar becomes ghostly, gentle and strange. You might look outside and see your world draped in silver, as if some quiet painter brushed it with a layer of mist and wonder. A backyard becomes a meadow. A driveway becomes a path through cloud. And the silence feels deeper, not empty, but full of softness. This is fog's midnight arrival. It loves the hours when most are asleep, when headlights are rare and footsteps are fewer. It curls into alleys and over fences, as if it's searching for stillness to settle into. It floats low, blanketing fields in softness, blurring the line between sky and earth. And yet, for all its beauty, fog is simply the air showing us how much water it can hold. When it's holding too much, the air releases its grasp, not with rain, but with a whisper. Some nights, you'll see it pooling in valleys. On others, it drifts over the sea, drawn inland like a tide made of cloud. It may arrive after sunset, or form just before dawn. And when the morning comes, the sun will slowly lift it away, layer by layer, until the world returns to clarity, as if the dream was never there. But in these late hours, before the light returns, fog is the companion of moonlight and quiet minds. It's the weather of poets, of early risers and gentle wanderers. So, if you find yourself awake on such a night, watching the mist weave its way through trees and rooftops, know that you're witnessing something rare and kind. A quiet moment where the atmosphere lets go and softness takes its place. Let yourself drift, just as the fog does, slowly, silently, into sleep. Fog is, quite simply, a cloud that has decided to rest, not far above you in the sky, but here, close to the ground, where you can walk. Through it, breathe it in, and feel its hush on your skin. While it may look like smoke or haze, fog is made of something familiar. Tiny droplets of water suspended in the air, so light and small that gravity cannot pull them down right away. These droplets form when warm, moist air cools just enough to release its invisible vapor into visible form. That's all fog truly is, a quiet exhale from the air itself. To form, the air must be nearly saturated with water vapor. When the temperature drops, or the air moves across a cooler surface like grass, pavement, or calm water, condensation occurs. The vapor turns to mist. The invisible becomes visible. It's a simple process, but the effect is magical. We often think of clouds as things above, floating, billowing far overhead. But fog reminds us that clouds can be here with us too, that we are not so far from the sky as we think. In fog, the air becomes a soft mirror. Trees seem to vanish into it. Streetlights wear halos, your own. Breath may feel like it becomes part of the atmosphere, blending with the mist around you. And while it may feel surreal, fog is deeply ordinary in its ingredients. Water, air, temperature, stillness, just the right balance of moisture and cooling, and the transformation begins. There are different kinds of fog, each with its own quiet personality. Radiation fog, for example, forms on clear, calm nights when the ground cools rapidly after sunset. As the surface loses heat, it chills the air just above it, allowing fog to appear in valleys and fields. It stays low, like a sleeping cloud nestled in the landscape. Advection fog forms when moist air moves over a cooler surface, like ocean air drifting over cold coastal waters. It rolls inland, pulled by the wind, drifting over hills and cliffs like slow tides of cloud. Upslope fog climbs mountain slopes, forming as air ascends and cools. It creeps upward, hugging ridges and blanketing summits in silence. Yet no matter the type, fog changes how we see the world. It muffles sound and hides detail, making the ordinary seem otherworldly. The distant fades into the near. Horizons disappear. What's familiar becomes soft-edged and strange, as if the world is caught between sleep and wakefulness. Fog asks us to slow down, to see less but feel more, to walk gently, speak softly, and notice what's usually missed. What is fog, really? It's the atmosphere telling stories in whispers. It's science dressed in softness, a moment when weather becomes emotion, calm, quiet, and close enough to touch. So the next time you step outside and the world has turned to mist, breathe it in gently. You're walking through a cloud that chose to come down and keep you company. Let it lead you slowly toward stillness and into sleep. When the air temperature falls to the dew point, fog can form. It's a quiet balancing act, the atmosphere finding its pause, its resting place. A moment when temperature and moisture meet not in conflict, but in calm agreement. The dew point is not a point in space, but a measure of softness. It tells us how much water the air is holding and how close it is to letting go. It's the moment when invisible vapor becomes visible mist, and the world begins to blur at the edges. On warm days, the air holds moisture like a secret. It carries water vapor high and low, over fields, through forests, around cities and open skies. But as night settles in and temperatures drop, the air's grip begins to loosen. And if it cools just enough, to that precise place known as the dew point, the water in the air slips free. It doesn't fall in heavy drops. It doesn't rush or pour. It simply appears, suspended, like a hush across the land. That's when fog forms. It's easy to think of the dew point as a threshold, a doorway. On one side, the world is clear. On the other, mist begins to gather. The air becomes full of tiny droplets, too light to fall, too many to ignore. When the temperature and the dew point are the same, or very close, the air is said to be saturated. It cannot hold one more invisible particle of water, so it releases them gently. And in that letting go, a transformation takes place. The ordinary becomes ethereal. You might wake early and see the fog curling through your garden or hovering in a meadow. You might walk down a familiar street and see it vanish into softness ahead. All of this begins at the dew point, the silent agreement between moisture and temperature. It's not always the same. In summer, the dew point might be higher because warmer air can carry more water. In winter, it's often lower, just as the days are shorter and the nights are cooler. But no matter the season, the story remains the same. As the sun sets and the earth exhales its warmth, the air begins to shift. A subtle meeting unfolds between heat and cool, between holding and releasing. And there, in that moment of surrender, fog is born. You can think of the dew point as the breath of balance. Not too much, not too little. Just the right softness for fog to find its way into the world. In weather reports, you might see the dew point listed as a number. But here, in the quiet of the night, it's something more poetic, a whisper between the sky and the ground, a promise that if the world slows down enough, it will be wrapped in mist. So if you ever find yourself walking through a foggy morning, know this: the air and temperature have come to rest. The atmosphere has let go, not in chaos, but in peace. And all around you, the world is quietly drifting through the space where science becomes serenity, and breath becomes cloud. Every night, as the sky darkens and the stars begin to blink awake, the earth begins to breathe out. It's a quiet, natural exhale, a release of warmth from everything that held the sun's energy during the day. Roads, rooftops, fields, forests, all of them begin to cool. The process is slow, tender, and deeply ordinary. And yet, it sets the stage for something softly magical, the formation of fog through what's known as radiational cooling. This is how it begins. On clear, calm nights, when clouds are few and winds are still, the earth radiates heat upward, sending it gently into space. With nothing above to hold that warmth in, the heat escapes freely, leaving the surface cooler by the hour. Imagine a field at dusk. The warmth it once held slips upward into the sky, and the grasses begin to cool. So does the air just above the ground. This layer of air, now chilled by contact with the earth, grows denser. It settles low and lingers. As the air cools, it nears its dew point. And when that moment comes, when the breath of the earth meets the breath of the air, fog forms. Not all at once, but gradually, a haze along the horizon, a film across a quiet road, a shimmer just above the ground, like something out of a dream. This is radiational fog, born not from movement or storms, but from stillness, from the peaceful release of warmth under a clear, star-watched sky. Unlike fog that rolls in from the sea or climbs a mountain slope, radiational fog hugs the earth. It doesn't travel, it pools. You'll often find it in valleys, dips in the land, or wide open spaces where air can rest without interruption. Trees may stand above it, their trunks swallowed by silver mist, Lights may glow softly, their beams unable to pierce more than a few steps ahead. And in this softness, the world becomes quieter. Sounds become muffled, footsteps seem gentler. Even your breath feels slower, as if the fog is asking you to match its pace. Unhurried, quiet, calm. Radiational cooling happens most effectively when the sky is clear and the wind is still. Clouds act like blankets, holding in heat. Wind stirs the air, mixing warm and cool layers. But when both are absent, radiational fog is free to form, like a cloud being born from the soil itself. It usually appears in the early morning, hours just before dawn. And as the sun begins to rise, the warming light melts the fog away. It lifts slowly, like a curtain being drawn back. What once felt hidden is revealed again. But for a little while, just a few sacred hours, the world is held in softness. So the next time you notice the ground misting over beneath a starry sky, know that you're witnessing the earth's gentle sigh, the breath it takes before morning, the moment when heat leaves the land and fog steps in to keep it company. Close your eyes now. Let your thoughts drift low, like cooled air. Let your breath slow, like the earth's, and sleep, soft and still, wrapped in the breath of radiational cooling. Fog is a creature of stillness. It prefers nights when the world is quiet, when wind is absent, and the air has settled into gentle rest. You may notice that the most breathtaking, delicate fog doesn't arrive during blustery evenings or stormy nights. Instead, it waits for silence. Because calm air is not just a backdrop for fog, it's a cradle. To understand why fog favors calm nights, imagine the air as a giant, invisible ocean. During the day, this ocean is stirred by winds, warmed by sunlight, and mixed by motion. The air tumbles and turns, carrying moisture upward and outward, dispersing the ingredients needed for fog before they can ever settle. But at night, the air changes its rhythm. As the sun slips below the horizon and the sky dims to violet, winds begin to fade. The ground releases the heat it held during the day, and the atmosphere gradually stills. In that peaceful pause, the invisible droplets of water in the air, droplets that were once scattered far and wide, now begin to gather. They aren't pulled together by force, but by softness. Without wind to scatter them, these tiny droplets remain suspended near the Earth's surface. The cooling of the ground brings the air temperature closer to the dew point, and with just the right amount of moisture already present, the scene is set for fog to form, gently, slowly, beautifully. When the air is calm, it allows a delicate balance to be reached. Moisture condenses into mist without being brushed away. Droplets form and stay, floating, drifting, suspended in stillness. It's as if the earth is holding its breath, and in that quiet exhale, fog blooms. That's why you'll often see fog nestled low in valleys or fields at dawn, places where cold air and calm air come together. Valleys are protected from wind. Open spaces allow the air to rest, and the fog, undisturbed, can gather in pools, like water collecting in a bowl. Even a light breeze can break this spell. A small gust is enough to mix the layers of the atmosphere, warming the cool surface air or dispersing the saturated layer. When that happens, fog either thins or never forms at all. That's why fog can vanish just as mysteriously as it arrives. A shift in wind is sometimes all it takes to wake the cradle and scatter the dream. So next time you step outside and see the world wrapped in quiet mist, take a moment to notice the stillness. Feel how the air doesn't move, how the trees don't rustle, how the night feels slower, deeper, as if it's been draped in velvet. That's the work of calm. It's what allows fog to linger on your windowsill, to drift through streetlights, to turn roads into rivers of cloud. It is the quiet that makes fog possible, not just the science of temperature and dew point, but the atmosphere's decision to be still. In that stillness, fog finds a home, and perhaps you too can find stillness there. A soft place to pause, a quiet moment to float, untouched by motion, as the night wraps gently around you. So breathe in deeply, feel the calm settle over you, and let the fog carry you softly towards sleep. Humidity is the hidden hand behind fog's gentle appearance. Though you cannot see it, you can often feel it in the thickness of summer air, the softness of a winter morning, or the heavy quiet before rain. It's the moisture that fills the atmosphere, waiting patiently for the right conditions to reveal itself. When it comes to fog, humidity holds the key. It decides how close the air is to becoming cloud. You see, air always holds some amount of water vapor, more when it's warm, less when it's cool. But when the air is nearly saturated with moisture, when it's holding almost as much as it possibly can, it takes only the slightest shift for transformation to begin. Just a whisper of cooling, just a breath of stillness, and suddenly fog forms. That's the magic of high humidity. When the air is already brimming with moisture, there's no need for storms or dramatic drops in temperature. A small change, the kind that happens on a quiet night, over a shaded field, beneath a clear sky, is enough to tip the balance. When the temperature drops to match the dew point, condensation occurs. Water vapor, once invisible, clings together into microscopic droplets. And when the air is very humid, that moment arrives effortlessly. The fog blooms out of softness. You might think of humidity as a kind of readiness. The atmosphere is prepared, on the edge of mist, holding its breath. And when it cools, even just a little, it lets go. In this way, fog is not forced, it's invited. That's why you'll often see thick fog on humid mornings, especially after a warm day, followed by a cool, calm night. The air is full, the earth is chilled, and the conditions are perfect for fog to gather, curl, and cradle the world in softness. There are times when the humidity is too low, even if the night is cold and still. In those moments, the air can cool and cool, but if there isn't enough moisture to condense, no fog will form. It is moisture that makes the invisible visible. It is humidity that allows the sky to rest on the ground. And once fog forms, humidity continues to shape it. When the air remains moist, the fog lingers. It thickens, drifts, and deepens. But if dry air begins to mix in, or if the sun rises and warms the earth, the fog slowly lifts, dissolving back into invisibility. Humidity is both the beginning and the end of fog's journey. So, when you breathe in a foggy morning and feel the air heavy with softness, you're feeling the fullness of the sky. The atmosphere is not empty. It is brimming with quiet potential, suspended in each droplet, glowing in each beam of filtered light. Let that softness surround you now. Feel the closeness of the air, as if the sky has come down to keep you company. The fog is not far away. It's in the breath of the world, in the hush between raindrops, in the whisper of humidity. And in this quiet, you are drifting too, slowly, gently, into the clouded edges of sleep. Beneath our feet lies a quiet participant in the story of fog, the ground, steady and soft, like a blanket turned inside out. We often look upward to understand the weather, to the sky, to clouds, to stars blinking far above. But much of what unfolds in the atmosphere begins at the surface, right here, beneath the soles of our shoes, beneath the grass, the pavement, the forest floors and garden beds. During the day, the ground gathers warmth. It soaks in sunlight, storing it just below the surface. Asphalt grows hot, soil warms, and even the tiniest stones hold on to golden afternoon heat. But when night comes, that stored energy is slowly released, like a long exhale. This release is part of a process known as radiational cooling. The Earth begins to lose heat to the open sky, sending gentle waves of warmth upward into space. The clearer the sky, the more freely this warmth escapes. Without clouds to hold the heat in, the ground cools more quickly, more deeply, and as it cools, it changes the air just above it. The surface becomes a kind of cold sink, gently chilling the lowest layer of the atmosphere. The air that rests just a few inches or feet above the Earth begins to cool too, drawn downward into stillness, into softness. This thin layer of air, now chilled by contact with the ground, becomes denser and heavier. It settles low, and as it cools, it moves closer to the dew point, that delicate place where moisture can no longer remain invisible. When the temperature of this air falls enough, fog begins to form. Quietly, naturally, as if the world is being wrapped not just by the air, but by the ground itself. The ground has become a partner in softness, a blanket that cools rather than warms, and in doing so, gives fog permission to appear. Think of a grassy field before dawn. The tips of the blades hold dew. The soil beneath is cool to the touch, and a thin silver mist curls just above the surface, not floating down from above, but blooming from the ground up, like breath from the earth itself. Different surfaces affect this cooling differently. Grass cools quickly, so does bare soil. Water, by contrast, releases heat more slowly. That's why fog often forms in meadows and fields, while lakes may remain clear. Concrete or asphalt may hold warmth longer, delaying the fog's arrival. But when conditions are right, clear skies, calm air, moist atmosphere, the ground becomes a quiet sculptor of fog, shaping it from below, cradling it like a dream come to rest. Even hillsides and valleys feel the touch of the earth's cooling breath. In dips and hollows, the denser, chilled air gathers. Fog settles in the lowest places, like water filling the softest parts of the landscape. It's a kind of meteorological gravity, and the ground, always beneath us, is gently guiding the fog where it can sleep. So, the next time you step into a morning laced with mist, let your feet feel the cool beneath them. Know that the earth, quiet and still, played its part in this softness. It is not just the sky that brings the weather. Sometimes, the ground below helps the world grow quiet, and the fog, like a hush, begins to rise. Sometimes, the sky turns upside down, not in appearance, but in temperature, in the quiet order of heat and height. Normally, warm air rises and cool air sinks, creating movement and mixing in the atmosphere. But every so often, this pattern flips and a gentle trap is formed. It's called a temperature inversion, and it plays a beautiful, silent role in holding fog close to the earth. Under typical conditions, the air near the ground is warmest, and as you move upward, it gradually cools. This encourages air to rise and fall, creating circulation that keeps the atmosphere in motion. But during an inversion, cooler air settles near the ground, and a layer of warmer air rests above it, like a lid placed softly atop a bowl of mist. This warmer air acts as a cap, preventing the cool air beneath from rising, and with it, it traps moisture, fog, and stillness. The world below the inversion becomes an isolated pocket, a gentle pause in the atmosphere's usual rhythm. The air stops moving, mixing slows, and fog, already forming near the surface, is held close, unable to lift. This is why fog can seem especially dense or long-lasting during an inversion. It has nowhere to go. The lid keeps it in place, softly, quietly. You'll often see this effect in valleys, where cold air naturally settles. The shape of the land allows the inversion to deepen. Fog forms in the lowest places, and the warmer air above acts as a seal. Even as the sun begins to rise, the fog may stay trapped for hours, only lifting once the inversion breaks. Sometimes, the inversion remains even after daylight arrives. That's when you'll see cities blanketed in low, silvery clouds, fog held firmly in place by invisible warmth above. It's a paradox of softness, a colder layer cradled beneath warmth, and moisture held not by pressure, but by protection. There's something poetic about it, the idea that fog, often so free and drifting, can be lovingly held in place by a quiet structure in the sky. It's not confined, it's comforted. Inversions also muffle sound, deepen stillness, and make the world feel more intimate. The air seems thicker, closer. Trees blur into the distance, their edges softened by a kind of meteorological embrace. Everything feels suspended, not just the fog, but time itself. Even your breath might feel like it lingers a little longer in the air, swirling gently before fading into the mist. And when the inversion finally lifts, usually with the warmth of the sun, the fog begins to thin, unravel, and drift upward. The world exhales, the lid releases, and the air begins to move again. But for those precious hours before that happens, the atmosphere rests. So, if you ever wake to find your world hushed in mist, held close beneath a low sky, know that you're standing inside a tender pause, a quiet trap made not of force, but of balance. A sky turned softly upside down. Let yourself drift in that pocket of calm, where fog floats just beneath the warmth, and sleep comes like breath, wrapped in cloud. Fog and mist, two gentle visitors from the atmosphere, both soft, both quiet, both suspended between the worlds of cloud and air. They drift through landscapes and minds with similar grace, wrapping trees in mystery and slowing the world to a hush. But if you pause to look a little closer, to breathe a little slower, you'll notice there is, in fact, a difference. And it all comes down to one simple thing: visibility. Fog is the denser cousin. It cloaks the world in a thicker blanket of cloud, reducing visibility to less than 1 kilometre, or just over half a mile. Mist, by contrast, is lighter, thinner, more transparent, a veil rather than a shroud. It allows more of the world to remain visible, though always softened at the edges. In fog, objects may disappear just a few steps ahead. A tree you saw a moment ago is now a shadow. A streetlight becomes a blurred halo. The distance collapses inward, and you're left in a world of silver and silence. Mist, on the other hand, keeps things partially revealed, softened, yes, but still visible. It's like looking through frosted glass. You can see the outline of the world, just not its details. A distant hillside might appear faded, watercolor-like, as though it's being remembered rather than seen. But both fog and mist are made from the same ingredients. Each is composed of tiny droplets of water suspended in the air. Each forms when the air is near saturation, when moisture condenses and floats, rather than falling as rain. And each one loves the stillness of early mornings and calm nights, when the wind is quiet and the earth is cool. Their difference lies not in their makeup, but in how much they obscure. Fog is immersive. Mist is suggestive. Fog wraps you in a moment. It says, "Be here now." It brings a kind of intimacy to the air, as if the world has drawn its curtains and invited you to sit in stillness. Mist invites you to wander. It says, "Look, but don't stare." It offers a kind of beauty that's half revealed, a gentle uncertainty. Some cultures have different words for each. In some languages, fog and mist are interchangeable. But in meteorology, the line is clear. Visibility of less than 1 kilometer? That's fog. Anything more than that? Mist. But in the heart, perhaps, the difference doesn't matter so much. Both fog and mist slow time. Both soften sound. Both turn the ordinary into something just a little more dreamlike. And when you're drifting into sleep, eyes closed, breath slow, thoughts dissolving like vapor, you may find yourself in a world that feels like fog or like mist. The difference will blur, the edges will fade, and only softness will remain. So, whether it's the thick hush of fog or the delicate touch of mist that greets you tomorrow, take a moment to feel it. Feel the way it quiets the horizon, the way it turns light into glow, the way it brings you back to stillness. After all, both fog and mist are simply the air choosing to show you its gentlest form, and both, in their own quiet way, are asking you to rest. Far out where the horizon sways, where the sea meets sky in a silver whisper, a quiet traveller moves across the water. It is advection fog, a soft, rolling mist born from contrast. Not dramatic, not loud, but slow and deliberate, like breath across a mirror. This kind of fog doesn't rise from the ground. It arrives by movement, warm, moist air gliding over a cooler surface, often the sea. As the warm air passes over the colder water, it begins to cool, slowly, patiently. And as it cools, it reaches its dew point, that threshold where water vapor condenses into cloud. But instead of rising, it drifts. The fog doesn't fall, it spreads, across waves, across coastlines, across harbours. It hugs the surface of the ocean, flowing like a tide of cloud, barely touching the sky. You've likely seen images of it. Thick fog rolling inland from the sea, climbing cliffs, blanketing bays. In places like San Francisco, where cool Pacific waters meet warmer air from inland, advection fog is a familiar friend, curling through the Golden Gate like smoke from a quiet fire. This fog can stretch for miles, carried by gentle wind. It moves gracefully, held low by the cooling below, and yet always on the move, unlike radiation fog, which pools and stays. Advection fog is a wanderer, a drifter, a travelling cloud. It doesn't just form over the ocean. It can also form when warm air crosses cold land, but over water. The effect is especially poetic. The ocean's coolness becomes a canvas, and the atmosphere paints fog upon it. Ships passing through may find their surroundings vanish. Coastlines disappear. The horizon fades. Navigation lights blink into whiteness. Voices are muffled, and the sea, already quiet, becomes even more so, a surface suspended in mist where direction is softened and time stretches. For those on shore, advection fog can arrive suddenly, carried by wind. One moment the sky is clear. The next, the world is wrapped in cloud. The temperature drops, the air thickens, and the sea seems to lean inward, offering its breath to the land. Even in its density, advection fog is not harsh. It brings no storm, only softness. Its presence reminds us that air and water are always in quiet conversation. That temperature is not just a number, but a doorway. And that fog, when born from movement, can travel far to deliver calm. You may feel this fog before you see it. A sudden coolness on your skin, a hush in the wind. And then, just ahead, the world begins to fade, not disappear, but transform. That's the gift of advection fog, transformation without noise. So, if you stand on a cliff or a harbour and watch the fog roll in from the sea, let it remind you of this: that even in motion there is peace, that not all journeys must be loud, and that sometimes the most beautiful arrivals come slowly, like a cloud making its way home. Close your eyes now. Imagine the ocean breathing, and let the fog roll across your thoughts, covering them gently until only stillness remains. At night, when the world begins to cool and the stars gather overhead, something soft and secret unfolds in the lowlands. Air, like water, has weight. It moves, it flows. And when the sun slips away and the earth begins to release its warmth, the air closest to the ground begins to cool. Slowly, silently. Cool air is heavier than warm air, and so, without sound or signal, it begins to slide downward, across hillsides, through meadows, into gentle folds in the land. It finds the lowest places, valleys, basins, quiet bowls of earth where the land seems to rest a little lower than the sky. There, the cool air gathers like a slow tide, and with it comes the mist. This is valley fog, a form of radiation fog shaped by the land itself. Once the cool air settles in the valley, it stays. Trapped by the hills or mountains that surround it, the dense, moist air cannot escape. With little wind to stir it, and surfaces cooling through the night, the temperature of the air nears the dew point. And then the transformation begins. Moisture condenses, droplets form, fog takes shape, not with drama, but with tenderness. It pools in the lowest places, like cream poured slowly into a bowl. It thickens as the night deepens, and by the time dawn is near, the valley is no longer empty air. It is filled with cloud. From above, the view is breathtaking. A sea of fog stretches across the valley floor, flat and unbroken, as if the landscape has been gently erased. Hills and treetops peek through like islands. Roads vanish. Sound is hushed. From within the valley, everything is wrapped in softness. Streetlights glow like moons. Fences fade into the white. Trees stand silent in the haze, their trunks disappearing halfway down, their crowns swaying just above the mist. You are inside a cloud that has chosen to rest upon the earth. Valley fog is especially common in autumn and winter, when long nights and calm winds give it the perfect conditions to form. The air cools efficiently, and the terrain shapes the fog like pottery, cradling it, holding it, guiding it gently into place. Sometimes this fog will last well into the morning. The sun must rise high enough to warm the valley floor, breaking the inversion that holds the cool air in place. Until then, the fog remains, thick, unmoving, timeless. There is something deeply peaceful about it, a sense of surrender. The valley does not resist the fog, it accepts it. It lets the mist settle, stay, and then lift when it's ready. Perhaps there's a lesson in that, to let the coolness come, to let the world slow, to allow stillness to find you, even if only for a night. So, if you find yourself waking in a valley wrapped in fog, know that you're not alone. The land too is sleeping. The air is still. The mist is not lost. It is exactly where it needs to be. And you, dear listener, are too. Sink gently now. Let your thoughts slide like cool air into soft places. Let the valley hold them, let the fog arrive, and rest in the quiet surrender of night. High in the hills, where the world leans into the sky, clouds sometimes come not from above, but from below. This is upslope fog, a gentle kind of cloud that forms as moist air climbs a slope, cooling with each step upward until it becomes mist wrapped around a mountain's shoulders. Unlike fog that settles into valleys or hugs the sea, upslope fog is shaped by movement and elevation. It is born from ascent, not speed, but slow, steady lift. As moist air travels across the landscape, it may encounter a ridge, a hillside, or the rising face of a mountain, and like a breath drawn toward the sky, the air begins to rise. As it ascends, the pressure around it decreases, and with lower pressure comes cooling. The higher the air climbs, the cooler it becomes. And if it cools to its dew point, that perfect, quiet temperature where water vapor can no longer stay invisible, the moisture condenses. And then the fog appears, not all at once, but gradually, a softening of the air, a thickening of the sky, a dream that begins at the base and wraps itself gently around tree trunks, cliffs, and winding mountain roads. This kind of fog doesn't stay low. It climbs with the land. You may see it nestled into the curves of a ridge trail, or drifting along forested slopes, or gathered at the summit, like a crown of cloud placed upon the mountain's head. It is not aggressive. It does not rush. It flows. Upslope fog may last for hours, even days, depending on the flow of moist air and the shape of the land. It brings with it a cooling hush, dampening sound, stilling motion, softening light. Climbers and hikers may find themselves walking into it, the world ahead vanishing into white. Tree lines disappear, rocks glisten with dew, and each step becomes quieter, dreamier, more inward. Mountains wear fog like shawls. They hold it without effort. And the trees, spruce, pine, or fir, stand still inside the mist, drinking in the moisture, sheltering birds, hiding the wind. In some places, this fog brings life. It delivers precious moisture to cloud forests, high elevation ecosystems that depend on this gentle air for survival. The fog wraps each leaf, each mossy stone, with coolness and care. There's something sacred about it, something old, as if the mountains are whispering to the sky, and the fog is the answer. And for those watching from below, it's like seeing a dream in progress, a place touched by sky and earth at once. So, if you ever walk a mountain path and find yourself surrounded by cloud, remember, you are inside a conversation between air and elevation. A mist made not by mystery, but by motion. A fog drawn upward by the quiet pull of terrain. Let yourself drift there. Let your breath match the slow climb of the air. And as you fall asleep tonight, imagine the mountain wrapped in mist, trees standing still, stones cooling beneath the fog's soft veil, and the sky leaning gently into the peaks. Dream in layers, rise like the fog, and rest in the quiet of the clouds. When winter arrives and the air grows cold enough to sting, fog does not disappear, it simply transforms. The moisture in the atmosphere still lingers, still floats, still breathes out across the land. But now, when temperatures fall below freezing, something delicate happens. The droplets that drift within the fog become colder than ice, and they wait for something solid to touch. This is freezing fog, a quiet painter of frost, a silent artist of winter's breath. The air, though filled with moisture, is so cold that every surface it touches becomes a canvas for crystal. The moment a supercooled droplet brushes against a tree branch, a mailbox, or a blade of grass, it freezes on contact. no sound, no sudden snap, just a silent transformation. The result is something called rime ice, feather-like crystals, opaque and soft, clinging to the windward side of whatever they find. Unlike clear ice, which forms from rain and looks like glass, rime is textured, frosty, like whispered snow frozen in place. In the early light of morning, you may see the world turned to sculpture. Twigs fringed with white, fence posts wrapped in soft fur, power lines adorned with lace. Every branch, every surface that faced the fog becomes a home for these frozen jewels. They are not sharp, not biting. They are winter's version of dew, the sky reaching out gently and leaving behind a trace of cold beauty. Freezing fog doesn't bring storms or drama. It doesn't shout. It arrives on still nights and early mornings, in valleys and open spaces where the air can remain calm and moist. It's most common when the ground is already frozen, when the earth has gone quiet for the season, and the warmth of the sun is just a distant memory. It lingers like any other fog, but with a touch more mystery, a kind of suspended elegance. The world becomes quieter in its presence, not because of the cold, but because of the softness it brings. The hush of a rime-covered landscape is profound, and when light passes through the fog, the glow of a distant headlamp, or the golden beam of a farmhouse porch, it scatters gently, illuminating crystals suspended in air. It feels like walking through a snow globe that never needs shaking. Yet even in its beauty, freezing fog reminds us of the subtle power of water. That even the gentlest droplet, when met with cold, can leave a lasting mark. That even the softest weather has form. Meteorologists may speak of it in technical terms: supercooled water droplets, deposition, temperature thresholds. But to those who witness it, freezing fog feels more like a memory etched in frost. A moment paused between breath and silence. So, if you wake one winter morning and see the trees adorned in white feathers, know that the fog has passed by. It has whispered across the land and left behind its jewels, ephemeral, fragile, and full of wonder. Let your thoughts do the same. Brush lightly against sleep and freeze into stillness just for a while. Fog doesn't only belong to valleys, forests, or the sea. It also finds its way into cities, into the spaces between buildings, over asphalt and concrete, through alleys and intersections, and wide, sleeping streets. This is city fog, and though it is made of the same ingredients as any other fog, moisture, stillness, temperature, it takes on a different tone when it mingles with light. Urban fog is painted not just by nature, but by neon, by headlights, by apartment windows glowing warm behind curtains. And when the mist is thick, these lights take on a new shape. Halos, auras, glowing orbs suspended in the haze. Street lamps become floating moons. Traffic signals blur into soft reds and greens, pulsing like quiet stars. And the distant shapes of buildings fade into silhouettes, as if the city has forgotten its edges. Despite the movement that defines city life, fog brings stillness. It wraps the noise in softness. Horns sound farther away. Footsteps seem quieter. Even voices, normally sharp against brick and glass, become muffled, absorbed into the mist. This is the magic of fog in an urban space. It transforms hard into soft. Concrete becomes canvas. Steel becomes shadow. Towers vanish at the top, as though being erased into the sky. City fog often forms in the early morning, especially in the cooler months, when the heat from the day fades and the air grows heavy with moisture. And while the city radiates its own warmth from engines, windows, and lights, it can still cool just enough for fog to form. Warm air, moving across cool pavement or resting in quiet parks, may reach its dew point. And then, slowly, silently, the city takes on a veil. Even in this human-made environment, nature has its place. Fog respects no boundary. It enters tunnels and train yards, brushes rooftops, and curls beneath bridges. It turns the urban grid into a dreamscape. And for those awake to see it, the early commuter, the late-night walker, the insomniac gazing out a window, city fog offers a moment of pause, a break from the buzz, a softening of angles. There's something deeply calming about watching a skyline disappear, not vanish, but blur, as if the city is remembering itself differently, as if even the tallest buildings want to dream. Photographers love city fog for how it reshapes light, bends reflections, and adds mood to every corner. But you don't need a camera to feel it. You only need a moment, a quiet gaze, a breath. Because fog, even here, is intimate. It reaches for you, not with hands, but with atmosphere. It makes the familiar mysterious, the loud gentle, the seen unseen. So, if you find yourself walking home under glowing street lamps and feel the mist on your cheeks, know that the fog has come to visit the city, not to quiet it completely, but to remind it how to soften. Close your eyes now. Let the sirens fade. Let the lights turn to orbs in the dark and drift like city fog through glowing silence into sleep. In fog, the world closes in. The horizon, once so far and wide, begins to blur. Trees that stood tall and distant now vanish into softness. Roads disappear just a few steps ahead. What once stretched far into the distance now feels close, quieter, more intimate. This is the quiet gift of fog, reduced visibility, a term meteorologists use to describe the measurable, but to the heart, it feels more like enchantment. A world drawn inward, a landscape softened. In clear air, we're constantly looking ahead, toward the far hill, the skyline, the next place. But in fog, all of that dissolves. What's next no longer matters. Only what's here, only what's near, only what you can see and feel in this very moment. Visibility is defined as the distance one can clearly see through the air. In fog, that distance shrinks, often to less than 1 kilometer, and sometimes far less. Streetlights fade into glow. The outlines of homes soften. The far end of a field becomes a blank canvas. But this shrinking of sight is not a loss, it's a shift. Fog invites us to focus not on the far, but on the near, on what is right here with us. It returns us to presence. There's something comforting about it, this feeling of being gently enclosed by the atmosphere. It's as though the sky is pulling in close, wrapping the world in a cocoon. You're not lost in the fog, you are held in it, and with that comes a kind of quiet freedom. No need to rush, no reason to worry about what lies far ahead. You are given permission to slow down, to take only the next few steps, to be with your breath and the air and the silence in between. This is why foggy mornings feel so different from sunny ones. On a bright day, your eyes stretch outward. You look toward the distance, planning, anticipating, scanning the horizon. But on a foggy day, your vision turns inward. You notice the dew on the grass, the shape of a leaf, the sound of your own footsteps. The fog creates a gentle tunnel around you, a world within a world. It may only be a few feet wide, but it holds everything you need. And in sleep, our minds do something similar. They narrow the field of focus. They turn off the noise of the wide world and invite us into the soft chamber of dreams, where only the present matters, and visibility fades by design. Even pilots and sailors speak of visibility with reverence. It is not simply about how far one can see, but about how conditions shape perception, how fog can become both a challenge and a wonder, a limit and a lullaby. So the next time fog arrives and the world fades into white, notice how close everything feels. The trees that loom like guardians, the buildings that blur like watercolor, the way light pools instead of beams, the way silence holds the space between things. And let it remind you that not seeing everything can be a kind of grace. You don't need the whole picture to rest. You don't need the horizon to feel safe. You only need this moment, this breath, this gentle cocoon of mist. And with that, visibility becomes something else entirely, a way back to peace. It's one of nature's softest ironies that the clearest nights, with skies swept clean of clouds, are the ones where fog most often finds its way to the ground. No storms, no rain, no wind, just calm, just stars. And yet, by morning, the world is wrapped in mist. How can something as elusive as fog be born from such perfect clarity? It begins with the setting sun. As daylight fades and shadows lengthen, the earth begins to release the heat it held throughout the day. This is a quiet process, a sigh from rooftops, fields, forests, and roads. The warmth rises, and without clouds to catch it, it escapes into the wide, open sky. Clouds usually act like a blanket, reflecting some of that heat back to the ground. But on a clear night, nothing holds the warmth in. The ground cools quickly. The air just above it cools too. And as the temperature drops, the air's ability to hold moisture lessens. When that temperature falls to the dew point, the moisture in the air condenses. Tiny droplets begin to form, suspended, weightless, barely there. And just like that, fog takes shape. This is called radiation fog because it forms through radiative cooling, the process of heat leaving the earth and slipping into the sky. But what makes it magical is how quietly it happens. There are no clouds to warn you, no weather alerts, no rush of wind or change in pressure, only stillness, only cooling, only air turning soft. You may go to bed under a clear, starry sky and wake to find the world completely changed. The lawn is silver, the trees are shrouded, the road vanishes into haze, and the sky that once opened to the stars is now low, close, and quiet. This kind of fog is often found in valleys and open fields, places where the air can settle, undisturbed. The wind must be calm. Too much movement, and the fog won't form. But when all is still, the ground becomes a quiet stage, and the fog begins its performance. Layer by layer, it grows, from low mist to gentle cloud, from a shimmer on the grass to a full embrace of the land. It's important to remember that fog doesn't always need clouds above to form. Sometimes it's the absence of clouds that allows the transformation to take place. The clearest nights are not empty. They are full of potential. Even astronomers speak of this balance. A night perfect for viewing stars may become, in the last few hours before dawn, too foggy to see it all. The air, once so clear, has quietly turned visible, and in that transformation there is poetry. The same sky that reveals constellations can, just hours later, hide the nearest tree. So, if you find yourself on such a night, with the stars overhead and silence all around, know that the fog may be on its way, not as a storm, but as a whisper, not as a surprise, but as a gift. Let the air cool, let the moisture gather, let the sky do what it does best, disappear into softness, and you too may vanish gently into sleep. There is a kind of fog that doesn't settle down from the air, but rises gently upward, like breath from a cup of tea. A fog that steams from the surface, curling into the cold, born not from stillness, but from contrast. This is evaporation fog, sometimes called steam fog, a mist that forms when cold air moves over warmer water, and the difference between them is enough to make the invisible visible. Imagine a still lake in early winter. The water, though cooled by the season, still holds warmth from the months before, but above it, the air has turned crisp, maybe even freezing. When this colder, drier air drifts across the water's surface, it begins to collect moisture. The warmth of the water evaporates into the chill. Vapor rises, but the cold air cannot hold what it gathers, so the water condenses almost immediately, not high in the sky, but just above the surface. Droplets form, a fine mist appears, and a delicate, swirling fog begins to rise. It looks like steam, but it's not the kind that burns. This is a cooler, gentler process, a conversation between water and sky, a breath shared between elements. You've likely seen this kind of fog before, drifting upward from ponds in the early morning, swirling over rivers at sunrise, curling across bays and lakes like whispered smoke. It's especially common in autumn and early winter, when water temperatures remain mild while the air cools quickly overnight. Sometimes you'll even see it above asphalt after rain, steam rising from pavement as the sun reappears. That's evaporation fog too, in miniature. A fleeting wisp, a brief balance between wet warmth and dry cool. Over oceans and large lakes, this fog can drift for miles. Over small puddles, it might last only a few seconds. But no matter its scale, the process is the same. Warm surface, cold air, rising vapor, immediate condensation. And the result is always soft, always cinematic. You might watch it dance over a river, like breath from the earth itself, twisting and dissolving, lifting and vanishing, as if the water is dreaming aloud. It's a reminder that fog does not always fall from the sky. Sometimes it rises from below. Sometimes it meets you from the ground up. Evaporation fog doesn't often last long. As the air warms, even just a little, the contrast disappears. The vapor no longer condenses, and the mist fades away like a memory. But while it's here, it transforms everything. A lake becomes a cauldron of softness. A forest stream becomes a portal. And even your own breath joins in, rising in visible puffs that disappear into the cool around you. It's weather-made personal, the atmosphere showing you how it breathes. So next time you walk past a warm pond on a cold morning, or gaze out at a bay wrapped in smoke-like curls, remember, the water is exhaling, the air is responding, and you are witnessing a moment where the world turns visible, just for a while. Close your eyes, breathe in, and let the fog rise through your thoughts, gently and slowly, like the breath of warm water into cold air. Fog does not last forever. Though it may linger like a dream through the early hours, soft and silver, it always begins to lift when morning arrives. Not all at once, not with drama or noise, but with warmth. This quiet farewell is known as the morning dissolution, the natural, graceful end of fog's overnight journey. It begins with light. As the sun rises, even before it clears the horizon, its energy begins to touch the landscape. Trees, rooftops, grasses, roads, they start to warm, slowly absorbing the soft heat of daybreak. The air near the surface begins to change. With every degree the temperature rises, the balance shifts. The fog that formed because air reached its dew point now finds that point rising. The temperature is no longer equal to the dew point, and so the air begins to hold more moisture once again, invisibly. The suspended droplets of fog, those tiny crystals of softness, start to evaporate, not fall, not vanish, just return to the air. They slip quietly back into vapor. The visible becomes invisible once more. From a distance, you may see the fog thinning, like gauze being pulled away from a window. The trees reappear. The houses beyond the field return. Roads regain their lines. Light breaks through in soft beams, scattering gold and silver into the mist as it fades. Some of the fog rises as it dissolves. This is often described as lifting. The lowest layers clear first, revealing the ground, while a thin blanket remains aloft for just a few more minutes. In some places, the fog rolls upward into low cloud. In others, it simply disappears, layer by layer, until nothing is left but air. Birdsong returns. Shadows sharpen. The world becomes defined again. But if you look closely, you'll notice that the fog never really left. It only changed form. The moisture is still there, still in the air, still in your breath, still part of the atmosphere that surrounds and holds us. Meteorologists speak of this process as a return to unsaturation, a return to balance. The air is warming, the dew point remains the same, and so the fog no longer has the conditions it needs to remain, but it leaves gently, with grace. And for a little while after it lifts, the world feels washed, fresh, like something has been cleaned with silence. Morning fog doesn't resist its end. It dissolves as it appeared, in stillness, in softness, in slowness. It teaches us that parting can be peaceful, that even transitions can be beautiful, and that not everything has to end with noise. So when you watch the fog fade from your window, or walk through the last wisps of it on your way into the day, take a moment to feel that shift, the return of definition, the warmth of light, the sky becoming sky again. Let it remind you that even the thickest fogs lift, that even softness has cycles, and that in your own rhythms of sleep, of breath, of thought, clarity always follows calm. Now, let the light warm your mind. Let the fog of waking thoughts begin to dissolve, and drift gently into rest, even as the fog drifts away. Autumn is the season of in-between. The days shorten, the air cools, leaves drift down like quiet notes on the wind, and somewhere between sunset and sunrise, the fog begins to arrive, slow, soft, and frequent. There is a reason why fog feels so at home in fall, why it lingers longer, why it returns again and again, night after night, curling through fields and forests like a familiar guest. Autumn offers the perfect stage for fog to perform. The sun, lower in the sky, brings warmth during the day, but not too much. By evening, that warmth fades quickly. The ground, still damp from morning dew or evening rain, releases its heat into the open night. With fewer hours of daylight, nights stretch longer, giving fog more time to form and more time to stay. As the earth cools, so too does the air resting just above it. If the air is humid, even just slightly, this cooling brings it closer to the dew point, that magical threshold where vapor condenses into mist. And when the dew point is reached, the fog begins. Autumn fog is often radiation fog, formed on calm, clear nights when heat escapes freely into the sky. It pools in valleys, creeps through low fields, and brushes across sleeping roads with delicate fingers. But in fall, fog doesn't just form more easily, it also stays longer. That's because the morning sun is weaker and the angle of its rays is low. It takes longer for its warmth to reach the ground, and longer still to warm the air enough to evaporate the fog away. While in summer, a morning fog may lift quickly, burned off by early sunlight. In autumn, it lingers. The fog clings to trees and tall grasses. It settles into hollows and hedgerows. Even after the sun is up, the mist may remain, not stubbornly, but peacefully. It's not unusual to walk through a foggy fall morning where the world feels both awake and asleep at once. Golden leaves shimmer behind silver mist. Spiderwebs sparkle with dew. Everything seems suspended, as though time itself has slowed to match the softness of the season. And then there's the smell of autumn fog, earthy, damp, clean. It carries the scent of leaves, soil, and faraway rain. It smells like change and like rest. The trees, having given up their green, stand still in the mist. Fields lie low, preparing for winter. Even birds grow quieter, their songs muted by fog's blanket. Autumn fog is not a weather event. It is a mood. It does not ask us to prepare or to fear, only to notice, to see less and feel more, to let the distance fade and the present come close. So when you step outside in fall and find the world veiled in mist, know that it's not just coincidence. It's the perfect alignment of season, temperature, and time. Fog comes more often in autumn because the world is ready to receive it. Let it wrap around you now. Let the softness stay. And like the trees preparing to rest, let yourself drift gently into stillness, where fog lingers and sleep begins. At night, when the wind stills and the sky opens wide, lakes begin to breathe. Their waters, dark and deep, release the warmth they gathered during the day. It rises gently, not in steam, not in vapor you can see right away, but in invisible waves, mingling with the air above. And when that air is cooler, something beautiful happens. The moisture from the lake begins to condense. Tiny droplets form just above the surface. They gather quietly, layer upon layer, until the mist becomes visible. This is night fog over lakes, one of nature's gentlest phenomena. It forms not from movement, but from calm, not from storm, but from contrast. Lakes retain warmth longer than the land. Their thermal memory is slow and steady. Long after the sun has disappeared, the water holds on to the day's energy. But the air, especially in autumn or early spring, cools quickly. As the air drifts across the surface of the lake, it begins to cool the moisture it has collected. And when it reaches the dew point, the moisture can no longer remain hidden. Fog begins to rise. At first, it may look like breath, a faint shimmer on the surface. Then it grows, curling and twisting, lifted by the lake's warmth and shaped by the air's chill. It hovers just above the water, like a ghostly veil. This is often called steam fog, but it is not steam in the way we know it from boiling pots or kettles. It is cooler, softer, and far more still. You may see it on a moonlit night, a lake wrapped in silver lace, or at dawn with the first light brushing the surface, the fog glowing as if lit from within. Boats may disappear into it. Trees reflected on the water may seem to vanish halfway down. Sound carries differently, muffled, hushed, wrapped in moisture. Sometimes this fog hugs the surface and stays close. Other times it drifts toward the shore, reaching out to the land in wisps and tendrils. It can feel as though the lake is exhaling and the landscape is breathing in. And while it may last only a few hours, the memory of it lingers. Fishermen speak of it with reverence, that moment before the sun burns it away, when the water and air feel alive with quiet. Photographers chase it, waiting in the cold morning with cameras poised, trying to catch the instant where fog meets reflection. But for most, it is simply felt. The chill on your skin, the glow around distant lights, the way the world feels quieter when the fog drapes over water. Lakes are natural keepers of calm, and at night, when they give off their warmth, they do so with grace. Night fog over lakes is not a weather warning. It is a lullaby, a reminder that warmth and coolness can meet and instead of clashing, create something beautiful. So let your breath rise like the fog. Let your thoughts drift low, like mist over still water, and sleep, soft and slow, beside the lake's gentle exhale. In the quiet hours of night, when the world grows soft and the stars shine undisturbed, clouds descend, not with urgency, not with sound, but with grace. These are not the high wandering clouds of daylight, not the bright cumulus towers or streaming cirrus wisps tracing the sun. No, these clouds are humble, grounded. They arrive low and quiet. They are fog, nocturnal clouds that have chosen to sleep upon the earth. It's easy to forget that fog is a cloud at all. We think of clouds as distant, floating far above, casting shadows on fields, drifting through the upper air. But fog is simply a cloud that has come closer, a cloud that has let go of height, a cloud that wishes to touch the land. Its ingredients are the same, tiny droplets of water suspended in air, so small they remain afloat. But unlike their lofty relatives, these droplets rest just above the surface, within reach of your hands, your breath, your footsteps. Fog is a cloud made intimate. It brushes your skin as you walk through it. It swirls around lamplight and lingers near your windows. It does not float above you, it wraps you. This closeness makes fog feel different, more personal, as if the sky is whispering secrets directly to the ground. And at night, when the winds are still and the ground has released the last of its warmth, conditions become perfect for these clouds to come down. The air cools, the dew point draws near, the invisible becomes visible, and the sky, rather than retreating upward, leans in. Nocturnal fogs often form in the stillness after midnight, a time when the balance tips, when radiational cooling has done its slow, quiet work. As the surface chills, the air near the ground becomes heavy, still, and saturated. Cloud droplets form, not up in the sky, but right here, around you. And so, the clouds settle. They nestle into valleys. They stretch across roads. They drift through forests and fields, no longer above, but among. You might step outside and find the world transformed, muted, blurred, made tender by the presence of this earthbound sky. Streetlights glow through it like moons. Trees lose their outlines. Even your breath seems to vanish into the cloud around you, as though you become part of it too. There's no thunder here, no gusts, no spectacle, just quiet, just closeness, just calm. And in that closeness, there is peace, because fog, as a nocturnal cloud, does not demand to be seen from afar. It offers itself gently to those who are near, to those who walk slowly, to those who wake early or sleep late, or pause for a moment at the edge of their day. It teaches us that not all clouds belong in the sky. Some are meant to be touched. Some are meant to touch us. So the next time you find yourself in fog's soft, embrace, remember, you are walking through a cloud, not below it, inside it. The night sky has come down to visit. Let it stay a while. Let it settle in your thoughts, and let yourself drift with it. a nocturnal cloud wrapped in dreams. Fog doesn't form everywhere. Like any gentle traveler, it has favorite places, certain landscapes it returns to again and again, as if drawn by memory. These are fog's sleeping grounds, regions where the air, the earth, and the sky align in such a way that fog not only forms, but rests, deeply, repeatedly, softly. You'll find these places in low-lying valleys, along coastlines, near rivers and lakes, across wetlands, and in the cool shadows of forests. In each, fog finds what it needs: moisture, stillness, and a surface that welcomes its touch. Take coastlines, for instance. Where the sea meets land, cool ocean currents often flow beneath warmer air. This creates conditions for advection fog, a soft mist carried inland by wind, hugging cliffs and drifting through seaside towns. Places like the Pacific Northwest, coastal California, or the shores of Nova Scotia are visited by fog frequently, sometimes daily. There, fog becomes a familiar companion, like the rhythm of tides. Then, there are river valleys. These quiet corridors, long and low, collect cool air at night. As warmth escapes, the air near the river reaches the dew point, and fog forms. Since valleys are naturally sheltered from wind, the fog stays, resting in the bowl of the earth. The longer the night, the deeper the fog sleeps. Wetlands and marshes are perhaps the most fog-loving places of all. Here, the ground itself is soaked with moisture, feeding the air above. When temperatures drop, the air is already near saturation. It doesn't take much for fog to form. And because the land is flat, damp, and often undisturbed, the fog can spread and deepen, becoming thick as cream. Forests, too, cradle fog with care. Trees slow the wind. Their leaves hold moisture. Their canopy filters light. Within a forest, fog feels thicker, closer, quieter. It hangs between trunks, collects on ferns, and paints the ground with dew. In temperate rainforests and cloud forests, this fog becomes a source of life, not just atmosphere, but nourishment. There are even places in the world known for their persistent fog, like the mist belt of Namibia, where ocean fog rolls inland over the desert, or the tule fog of California's Central Valley, where winter mornings often begin in a world of whiteness. But fog doesn't only sleep in famous places. It sleeps wherever the conditions are right, where water lingers, where the ground cools, and where air slows to a hush. Even a field behind your home may be such a place. A quiet road, a dip in the landscape, a small garden after rain. Wherever fog finds peace, it will stay. It doesn't hurry. It doesn't roam without cause. It settles. It rests. It returns. And so do we. Just as fog chooses places where it can sleep deeply, we too seek comfort in blankets, in quiet, in the softness of a still room. Tonight, let your mind be like a valley. Let your breath be like a river. Let your thoughts be like trees holding moisture. And let the fog settle in you, softly, deeply, until morning comes. There are moments when even the sky must pause, when engines wait, when metal birds sleep, when the runways, long and certain, vanish into silver silence. This is airport fog, a dense, ground-hugging veil that brings the world of flight to a hush. Airports are built on precision. Every arrival, every departure, every runway light calibrated for clarity and direction. But fog, thick, soft, and indifferent to schedules, changes all of that. When it rolls in, visibility fades, lights blur, paths vanish, and planes wait. It doesn't take much. When visibility drops below a certain threshold, usually less than 1,000 meters, pilots cannot safely take off or land. The world outside the cockpit turns into a cloud. The horizon disappears. The tarmac becomes a blank page. So everything slows. Jet engines quiet. Terminals grow still. Passengers become watchers of weather, eyes pressed to fogged windows, waiting for the sky to return. There is a stillness at fogged-in airports that feels almost reverent. A strange contrast, the place built for movement, brought to pause by softness. From above, the fog looks like a sea, smooth and endless. Control towers might rise through it like lighthouses. Hangars vanish beneath it. Lights flicker faintly through layers of white. This is not a storm. There is no thunder, no wind, only the absence of view. And yet, there is safety in this stillness. Modern aircraft rely on instruments to guide them through fog. Some landings and departures can still take place, especially with the help of low visibility systems, approach lighting, and highly trained crews. But when the fog becomes too dense, even technology defers to nature. And so, planes wait on the ground. Wings still, wheels resting. From the cabin, it may feel as though time is suspended. The windows show only mist. The world narrows to a few feet. A strange hush settles across the fuselage. And outside, the airport sleeps, not because it's night, but because the fog has asked it to. There is something beautiful in this temporary surrender, a pause in travel, a moment between destinations, a breath in the machinery of movement. And when the fog finally begins to lift, when the morning sun starts to warm the air, it does so gradually. The outlines return, the runways reappear, the planes, once grounded, prepare to rise again. But for a while, there was peace. A softness grounded the sky, and the world of motion remembered stillness. So, if you ever find yourself delayed in fog, waiting at a gate or on a quiet runway, take a moment to notice the beauty of the pause. You are witnessing the rare meeting of atmosphere and aviation, the place where weather humbles flight. Let it remind you that it's okay to wait, that clarity returns, that stillness too has its purpose, and that even wings rest sometimes in the mist. Step into a forest on a foggy morning, and the world changes. The trees, tall and familiar, now seem older, quieter, as if they've been wrapped in centuries of mist, as if time itself has slowed to match the rhythm of the fog. In forests, fog is not just present, it is part of the place. It lingers between branches, it drapes across moss, it curls around trunks and settles into roots. And everything, every sound, every shape becomes softer. Birdsong, normally crisp and echoing through the canopy, becomes muted. Footsteps vanish into the leaf-strewn floor. The rustle of branches is reduced to a whisper. Fog brings a kind of hush to the forest, a muffling of the senses. It absorbs sound, so the forest becomes quieter, more inward. It scatters light, so morning beams become diffused, dreamlike. And it narrows sight, so what once stretched far now lies, hidden, just beyond reach. Trees fade into the mist one layer at a time. The nearest stand clear, dark and still. But beyond them, shapes grow fainter, as though the forest is dissolving into cloud. Ferns drip with moisture, spiderwebs glisten with droplets, and leaves, usually rustling with wind, hang heavy and still. This is fog's favourite stage, a quiet forest with no breeze, no noise, only space for stillness. It's common in rainforests, in cloud forests, and in temperate woods after cool, damp nights. These environments hold moisture well. The canopy traps humidity. The ground stays soft and rich with water. And when the air cools, the fog doesn't just arrive, it settles in. It may begin before dawn, a faint lightening of the mist between trees, or rise from the forest floor after the ground gives off its warmth. Either way, it feels more like an atmosphere than a condition, not something you walk through, but something you enter. In some forests, fog becomes a lifeline. In coastal redwood groves, for instance, trees draw water directly from the fog. Their needles catch moisture in the air, which then drips to the forest floor, feeding roots and streams. Fog here is not just a mood, it's part of the ecosystem. But beyond its function, forest fog brings feeling. It brings mystery. It brings reverence. It brings silence so deep you can hear your own breath as part of the weather. Wandering a foggy forest can feel like stepping between worlds. The known becomes unknown, the seen becomes imagined, and your senses tune themselves to slowness, to subtlety, to soft details. A branch glistens in the distance. A bird flutters and disappears. A beam of light pierces the canopy and turns to gold in the mist. And then the fog begins to lift, but not all at once. In the forest, the fog rises slowly, threading itself upward through the trunks, dissolving gently into the sky. So, if you ever wake to a wooded path wrapped in fog, take your time. Let the silence guide you. Let the softened light ease your thoughts. And remember, you're walking through weather that has chosen to rest in the trees. Not to rush, not to frighten, only to soften the world, one branch at a time. What colour is fog? At first glance, it seems obvious. White, perhaps, or a soft grey. But linger a moment longer and you'll see. Fog has no true colour of its own. It is a mirror, a canvas, a vessel for light. Fog is made of tiny water droplets suspended in air, thousands, millions, drifting so closely together that they scatter light in every direction. This scattering blurs edges, hides details, and transforms the landscape into a world of softness. And in doing so, fog becomes something more than a weather event. It becomes a painter of light. In the early morning, fog may appear silver, not metallic, but muted, like the shimmer of worn satin. This is the sun trying to rise, filtered through a veil, turning everything pale and dreamy. At midday, fog may seem pearl grey or even milky white, its brightness shaped by the position of the sun. The droplets scatter the light evenly, giving the entire world a diffuse glow without shadow or glare. And in the golden hour, just before sunset, fog can take on the colours of fire and honey. It glows from within, reflecting soft oranges, pinks, and even deep reds. The mist becomes a prism for the sky, but at night, fog turns quiet. It adopts the glow of lamps, windows, and headlights. A streetlight in fog doesn't simply shine, it radiates, casting warm halos that pulse softly in the mist. Colours in fog are not flat, they shimmer, they shift. Walk through a foggy forest and you'll notice how greens become dusty jade, how browns deepen into charcoal, how distance turns to silver. The world loses its high contrasts and sharp edges. Everything fades gently into itself. This lack of definite colour is not an absence. It's an invitation. Fog asks us to see with softness, to stop labelling white, grey, black, and instead feel the tones as moods. The palette of fog is the palette of pause, and sometimes, especially in denser fog, colour disappears almost entirely. The world becomes monochrome, like a pencil sketch still being drawn, your surroundings reduced to shape and shadow. You walk not through scenery, but through sensation. This is because fog, in a way, obscures the source of light. It bends and scatters photons, so you don't see the light itself. You see its echo, its wash, its softened presence. In photography, this is called diffused light, the kind that erases harsh shadows and turns everything luminous. It's why fog is beloved by artists and dreamers. It makes everything look like memory. Even people seem different in fog, not just smaller or farther, but gentler. As if they too have become part of the mist. Their outlines blur, their footsteps vanish. And so, the colour of fog is not just about sight, it is about feeling. The way white turns to warmth under a lamp. The way grey becomes gold at dawn. The way silver isn't cold, but soft. So the next time you ask what colour fog is, look around and look within. What does the world feel like when edges disappear? Let the colour of fog wash over you now. Not white, not grey, not silver, but softness made visible. Close your eyes and let the palette of mist lull you gently into sleep. Fog is not silent. It may appear still, soft and slow, but listen closely and you'll hear that fog changes the way the world sounds. It doesn't add noise, it reshapes it. In fog, sound travels differently, not because the sound itself has changed, but because the medium it moves through has thickened. The suspended droplets of water scatter sound waves, just as they do light. But while fog makes the world look smaller, it makes sound feel closer, rounder, and harder to place. You may hear a dog bark, but not know where it came from. A car in the distance may seem suddenly near. A bird call may echo in unexpected ways, softer, flatter, diffused. This is because fog distorts direction. The high-frequency parts of sound, the sharper tones that help us locate a source, are scattered or absorbed by the moisture in the air. What reaches your ears are the lower, rounder frequencies, the bass notes of the world, drifting slowly and without urgency. And so, sound becomes dreamlike. Voices in fog feel hushed, even if they're close. Footsteps are muffled. Leaves underfoot seem dampened. Wind, if present at all, whispers rather than gusts. It feels as though every sound is wearing a layer of velvet. Even your own breath sounds different, more intimate, more present, a soft rhythm, syncing with the fog around you. In the city, fog brings a rare kind of quiet. Traffic hums but doesn't shout. Horns blur into the background. Sirens fade faster. The buzz of everyday life is lowered, as if someone has turned the volume knob gently down. In the forest, fog deepens the hush. Birds call less. Squirrels stay low. The rustle of branches is subdued. The entire soundscape feels pulled inward, as if the world is listening to itself breathe. This is not silence. It is soft attention, and sometimes fog enhances sound in unexpected ways. Over water, fog can carry low-frequency sound farther than usual. A foghorn may echo endlessly across a bay. A boat's motor may seem to circle around you, even when it's still. This confusion of direction and distance can make fog feel surreal, like walking through a dream, like hearing without seeing, like being inside a world that has folded in on itself. There's beauty in this auditory fog. It asks you to pause, to listen not for clarity, but for closeness, to stop trying to place the sound and simply receive it. In this way, fog helps us return to presence. You're not tracking the source. You're simply hearing what is, in this moment, in this softness, in this breath. And as you lie here, letting the world grow quieter around you, imagine this. A streetlight humming faintly behind mist, an owl calling into the haze, a voice, soft, slow, telling you that you are safe, and it's time to rest. Let the sound of fog surround you now, not with silence, but with softness. Not with noise, but with nearness. Not with answers, but with peace. Breathe in, listen, and drift into the echoing stillness of sleep. Along the rugged Pacific edge of California, where cliffs rise steep from the sea and redwoods lean over the waves, fog arrives like a tide, not with violence, but with grace. It doesn't fall, it flows. This is coastal fog, one of nature's most beautiful partnerships between land, sea, and sky. It appears suddenly, often in the early morning or late afternoon, brushing across beaches, winding through hills, and wrapping cities like San Francisco in a shawl of silver. It begins offshore, where the ocean is cold, chilled by the California current, a stream of frigid water that flows southward along the coast. Above this cool, current, warmer, moist air drifts inland from the Pacific. And when this warm air glides over the colder surface of the ocean, it begins to cool, gently, evenly, gradually, until the temperature drops to the dew point. And that's when the fog forms, not high in the sky, not from a storm, but right at the place where air meets sea, that thin seam of contrast where visibility vanishes. The fog builds low and dense, sometimes stretching for miles. It touches the surface of the water like breath against a mirror. And when the wind shifts, it moves inland, curling around cliffs, crawling through canyons, pouring into valleys. It drapes over the Golden Gate like lace. It hushes the roar of the surf. It swallows coastlines and reveals them slowly, as if in dream. This fog can be thick and persistent, enough to reduce visibility to just a few steps. Drivers on Highway 1 may find the road ahead dissolving. Hikers in Big Sur may walk from sunshine into mist in a matter of moments. Even the redwoods grow quiet beneath the fog's cool touch. But this isn't a storm to fear. It's a cycle, a daily dance. During the day, the inland valleys of California warm under the sun. That rising heat pulls moist ocean air across the coastline. The fog rolls in to fill the space, feeding the land with moisture, cooling the skin of the state. By afternoon or evening, the fog may retreat again, pushed back out to sea by strengthening sunlight or shifting winds. But at night, it often returns, blanketing the coast in softness once more. This cycle gives the California coast its unique atmosphere, both literally and emotionally. It brings water to the redwoods through condensation. It softens dry summers. It shapes the rhythm of life along the shoreline. Locals have names for it: the marine layer, the low clouds, or simply the fog, a quiet daily visitor, always returning, never rushing. It slows time. In the fog, light spreads wide, sounds deepen, edges disappear. A familiar path becomes ethereal. And even in a busy city, the fog can make everything feel still, secret, timeless. So, if you ever find yourself standing on the cliffs of California and the fog begins to roll in from the sea, don't rush. Don't turn away. Watch it arrive. Let it wrap around your shoulders. Let it cool your breath. Let it remind you that even in motion, there is peace. Even in change, there is calm. Let the coastal fog carry you, gently, slowly, into sleep. When fog wraps the sea in silence and the coastline fades into pale grey, there is one light that still cuts through. Not the sun, not the moon, but the steady sweep of a lighthouse beam, soft, slow, spectral. Lighthouses were built for nights like this, when ships could no longer see the stars, when coastlines vanished into cloud, and when the sea became a place of uncertainty and softness. In fog, this light becomes more than a guide. It becomes a presence. You may have seen it, the way a lighthouse beam moves through mist, turning round and round like a giant eye, slowly opening and closing. But unlike the harsh beam of a flashlight, this light is filtered by fog. It glows rather than shines. It pulses rather than cuts. Fog scatters light, a process called a diffusion. Instead of traveling in a straight line, the photons bounce off the water droplets suspended in the air. They spread outward in every direction, wrapping the beam in a glowing halo. This is why, in fog, a lighthouse doesn't just point the way. It fills the air with presence. You don't just see the beam, you feel it. It brushes across the sea like a hand on water. It sweeps across the land like a whisper on stone. For sailors, this light is comfort, a signal that land is near, even if it cannot be seen. A steady, repeating message. You are not alone. You are not lost. You are almost home. Even the sound of the foghorn, deep and low, becomes part of this rhythm, a call into the mist, answered by the rotating light. Together, they form a duet of guidance. But even from shore, even from dry land, there is something hauntingly beautiful about a lighthouse in fog. You might stand on a cliff or in a quiet harbour, watching the beam rotate. It appears, disappears, appears again. The fog catches it like breath. The light softens, flickers, fades. Each turn feels like a heartbeat in the mist. And beyond that beam lies the unknown, not frightening, but vast. A sea without shape. A world made of cloud. It reminds us that not everything must be clearly seen to be trusted. The lighthouse beam doesn't light the whole journey, just one slow turn at a time. Just enough for the next step. Just enough to say, I'm here. There's a lesson in that, especially at night, especially when the mind grows foggy and thoughts drift like ships in low water. You don't need to see the whole map. You don't need all the answers. Just one calm light, one breath, one gentle spin of reassurance. So, as you drift tonight, imagine a lighthouse at the edge of the world, its beam sweeping slowly through a sea of mist. A light that never rushes, a presence that never fails. Let it turn through your thoughts. Let it remind you that even in fog there is guidance, even in darkness there is rhythm, and that somewhere in the softness a light is waiting to carry you home. Sleep now. The fog is thick, but the light still turns. Before the sun rises, before the tractors hum and the roosters call, there is fog. It rests low over the fields, thick and quiet, a blanket drawn lovingly across the land. Fog over farmland is a gentle phenomenon, shaped by open skies, wide spaces, and the stillness of early morning. It arrives before the day begins, not in haste, but in hush. The air here cools quickly overnight. Without the shelter of tall buildings or dense forests, the warmth from the soil is free to rise into the open sky. And with no clouds to hold it in, the heat escapes. The land cools. The air near the ground cools. Moisture condenses, and fog is born. You might wake in the farmhouse and see the world outside your window, blurred and glowing. The barn roof softened, the pasture erased beyond a few steps. Fences become ghost lines. Crops stand quietly under a veil of white. This is radiation fog, formed by still nights and wide skies. Conditions farmland knows well. And for the crops, this fog is a blessing. The droplets it holds nourish plants gently, without storm or saturation. Leaves drink in the moisture. The soil stays cool. Tiny beads of water cling to cornstalks and wheat blades like morning jewelry. Even the animals are quieter. Cows stand half hidden in the mist, their breath rising to meet the fog. Birds delay their songs, waiting for the world to return. And farmers, stepping out into the haze, may pause just a little longer on the porch to breathe in the softness before the day begins. In these moments, farmland becomes a kind of canvas. The outlines of hay bales, windmills, and silos are drawn in pastel grey. The sun, rising behind it all, begins to turn the fog gold. You might see the mist lift slowly from the low parts of the land, staying longer in the dips and hollows. Fields aren't perfectly flat. They have their own contours. And the fog, like water, gathers in the quietest places. By mid-morning, the fog begins to fade. The sun strengthens, the dew evaporates, and the landscape returns, vivid and defined. But for a few sacred hours, everything was still. No machines, no schedules, only earth, air, and mist breathing together. Fog on farmland teaches us that softness can be fruitful, that rest nourishes, that growth often begins in stillness. So close your eyes now. Imagine the fields before the harvest, the hush of morning, the gentle fog rolling low across open land, and let your thoughts rest there, in quiet furrows of sleep. Fog is ancient, a weathered traveller from a time before cities, before roads, before lights filled the night sky. But now, as the world changes, so too does fog, and we, unknowingly, are part of that change. Human activity shapes fog in subtle and surprising ways. The warmth we generate, the surfaces we build, the lights we shine, all play a role in how fog forms, lingers, or disappears. One of the clearest influences is the urban heat island effect. Cities, with their asphalt, metal, and concrete, absorb heat during the day and release it slowly overnight. This keeps the air above them warmer than surrounding rural areas. And since fog often forms when the air cools to its dew point, this added warmth can prevent fog from appearing altogether. What might be a foggy morning in the countryside becomes a clear dawn in the city, simply because the ground doesn't cool enough. At the same time, human-made pollution can actually make fog thicker. Particles from car exhaust, industry, and other sources serve as condensation nuclei, tiny specks that water vapor can cling to. The more particles in the air, the more droplets fog can form. In this way, pollution can increase the density of fog, especially in industrial regions. But this fog, sometimes called smog when mixed with pollutants, isn't always soft or gentle. It may sting the eyes. It may linger longer, heavier, and with a chemical tinge. In the past, before air quality regulations, some cities experienced dangerous fog events, thick blankets of polluted air that reduced visibility for days. The infamous 1952 Great Smog of London is one such example, when fog and pollution combined to deadly effect. Even artificial light plays a role. On a foggy night, city lights reflect off the suspended droplets, creating halos, glowing domes, and a sky that never truly goes dark. This makes fog more visible, more cinematic, but it also means we never see it in its natural darkness. The light, scattered through the mist, changes how we experience the fog entirely. In a way, fog becomes a reflection of us. It shows us how our energy moves, how our cities breathe, how even something as quiet as mist is shaped by our choices. And yet, fog still comes. It still drapes the fields, rolls over lakes, curls into forests, and wraps coastal cliffs. It adapts, it shifts, it waits for the right conditions. In some places, fog may appear less often than it once did. In others, it may stay longer or grow thicker. But it remains part of the atmosphere's language, responding to temperature, moisture, and now, the footprint of humanity. So as you lie here, thinking of fog, know that it is not untouched, but it is still true, still quiet, still ancient, still willing to wrap the world in calm, even as we change the world around it. Let that calm find you now. Like fog, even in a noisy, glowing world, stillness can return. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and drift, softly, humanly, into mist. Walking through fog is like stepping into a dream you can touch. There's no sound announcing your arrival, no resistance from the air, and yet everything feels different. The light is dimmed, the world is closer. Your breath hangs in the air longer than before. Even before you see the fog, you feel it. There's a coolness that kisses your cheeks, a fine dampness that collects softly on your skin. Moisture gathers on your eyelashes, light as dew. If you stay still, you may even notice droplets forming along your coat sleeves, tiny reminders that you're walking through suspended cloud. The air feels thicker, not heavy, but round, as though every molecule has slowed down. Your steps sound quieter, the crunch of gravel or the tap of your shoes swallowed almost immediately into the mist. This silence isn't emptiness, it's softness, a gentle hush over everything. The world you walk through, the trees, the street, the fences, the familiar shapes, has been edited, not erased, but blurred, as if you're moving through a watercolor painting, still waiting to dry. And with each step, the scenery changes, but only by inches. What lies far ahead remains a mystery. The fog only gives you what's near. This creates a peculiar feeling, not fear, not confusion, but presence. You're here now, not in the distance, not down the road, but exactly where your feet are. There is no rush. There is no destination visible, only the next breath, only the next step. And in that way, walking through fog is almost meditative. Each motion becomes intentional. Each blink, each inhale, each footfall becomes a part of the landscape itself. And the fog walks with you. If you look behind, you'll see how quickly your path vanishes. There's no trail, no record of where you've just been, only fog folding gently in on itself, like the memory of a thought already fading. Sounds are different too. You might hear a bird, but from where? You might catch the low hum of a car, but how far away is it? In fog, sound loses its direction. It travels differently, bending through the mist, arriving rounder and harder to place. And so, the world becomes even more internal, your senses turning inward, your thoughts quieter, your pace slower. Even time feels altered. Minutes stretch. The familiar becomes strange. A walk you've taken 100 times becomes something else entirely, something between weather and feeling. Because that's what fog is, not just a visual, not just a scientific state, but an experience, a moment when the atmosphere embraces you, when the sky is not overhead, but around you. You're not beneath the weather, you're within it. So the next time you walk through fog, don't rush. Notice the way the light scatters. Notice how close the world becomes. Let the air rest on your skin. Let your thoughts follow the silence. You are walking through the dream of the weather. And now, as your body finds stillness, let that same dream settle over you. Let the fog fold around your breath. Let each thought grow quiet and drift, step by step, into sleep. When we think of fog in history, one place often comes to mind: London, a city of gas lamps, cobbled streets, and whispered stories wrapped in layers of mist. But the fogs of old London were not quite like the soft veils we know today. They were thicker, darker, a blend of weather and industry. cloud and coal. These were the fogs of soot and smoke, born not only of moisture in the air, but of chimneys, factories, and coal-burning fires that filled the sky with particles. By the late 1800s and into the early 20th century, London was known not just for its weather, but for its pea soupers, fogs so thick and yellow they seemed almost alive. They earned the name because of their colour and density. Fogs with a greenish or brown tint, heavy with soot and sulphur, so dense that people lost their way on foot and carriages stalled in the street. At times, visibility dropped to just a few feet. Lamps glowed faintly behind veils of grime. The Thames disappeared into haze. Buildings loomed like ghosts, and the city moved more slowly, not out of reverence, but out of necessity. The cause was a mixture of natural fog and human-made pollution. Cold, damp air met smoke-filled skies, especially during winter. The moisture condensed on soot particles, forming thick, acrid fog that blanketed the city for days. In December of 1952, one of the most infamous events unfolded, the Great Smog of London. It lasted 5 long days, during which the city came to a near standstill. The air grew so foul that indoor concerts were cancelled due to poor visibility inside theatres. Trains were delayed, schools closed, and sadly, thousands of lives were lost due to respiratory complications. That smog marked a turning point. In the years that followed, laws were passed to reduce pollution. The burning of coal was restricted. Clean air legislation was introduced. And slowly, the fogs of London began to change. Today, the city still sees fog, especially in the cooler months. But it is no longer yellow, no longer acrid. The fog that now drapes across the Thames is soft and pale, a return to what fog has always been, a gift of the atmosphere, not a warning. And yet, the memory lingers. Fog is part of London's identity. It has shaped art, literature, and law. Writers like Dickens and Conan Doyle filled their stories with its ghostly presence. Painters captured it in strokes of grey and gold. And to this day, fog in London feels somehow different, as though it remembers the weight it once carried. It whispers of history, of coal fires and carriages, of riverbanks and revolution, of a city that once vanished into its own breath. So, when fog returns to London, now clean, now safe, now cinematic, it feels like a reunion, a softer echo of something once dense and difficult. You may walk across a bridge and see the dome of St. Paul's vanish. You may stroll a garden and find the paths dissolving into white. But you are walking through fog that has been with this city for centuries. Let it guide you now. Let the fog of memory, once heavy, grow light. Close your eyes and rest within the quiet mist of a city that learned how to breathe again. Fog has always stirred something in the human spirit. It is not loud, it is not fierce, it does not shout across the landscape, but still, it speaks. To artists and poets across time, fog has been more than weather. It has been a muse, a metaphor, a mystery, just barely visible through the blur. J.M.W. Turner, the British painter, known for his swirling skies and dissolving light, captured fog as feeling. His ships vanished into golden haze. His cities shimmered at the edge of visibility. He didn't paint details, he painted atmosphere. You don't see Turner's fog so much as feel it. The softness, the light, the surrender of shape. Then came Monet, whose mornings in London gave us bridges and rivers washed in mist. His paintings are quiet, silhouettes and reflections. Street lamps glowing faintly in the fog. Houses of Parliament, rendered not as stone, but as ghosts of colour. His brush said what fog says: you don't need to see everything to feel everything. And poets, oh, how they've loved fog. Carl Sandburg imagined it coming in on little cat feet, quiet and watchful. Not storm, not storm warning, just fog, arriving without rush, lingering without sound. Others, Emily Dickinson, Seamus Heaney, Matsuo Basho, found in fog the perfect metaphor for memory, for mystery, for the delicate spaces between thought and knowing. In Japanese haiku, fog becomes both weather and emotion. Morning fog, even the crows cry softly, because that's what fog does. It hushes, it softens, it makes room for pause. Fog invites us not to understand, but to wonder. In art, fog is permission to blur the lines, to leave some corners undefined. In poetry, it's a tool to evoke a mood, to speak of things unspoken. In music, it's the soft pedal held down, a sound trailing into stillness. Even photographers wait for fog. It is nature's soft filter, removing distractions and adding depth. A tree becomes a silhouette. A lamp becomes a halo. A person becomes a shape, caught between foreground and memory. Fog is a visual lullaby, and so we return to it, not just in weather, but in expression. Artists use fog when they want us to feel, not just see. Poets write it when they want us to pause, not just read. Because fog is not absence, it is presence, slowed. It is the world forgetting its sharpness, remembering its softness. And when we experience it, we are pulled into that same rhythm. We don't rush through a foggy path. We walk slower. We look closer. We feel more. So tonight, let the art of fog wrap around your thoughts. Let the brushstrokes blur. Let the lines fade. Let the words soften into breath. You are walking through a painting now, a poem with no punctuation, a dream made of weather. And somewhere in the mist, your sleep waits like a verse not yet spoken. There is a moment, rare and golden, when the soft hush of fog meets the slow warmth of morning light, and the world begins to glow. This isn't the harsh blaze of noon, or the crisp brightness of a clear morning. This is fog lit by sun, filtered, diffused, made holy. It begins just after dawn. The sky, still hushed in colour, begins to shift. The sun rises behind the horizon, and its light touches the fog not directly, but through. The droplets suspended in the air catch the sunlight. They scatter it, not sharply, but like dust in a cathedral. Every beam becomes wider, softer, and suddenly the fog is not just white or grey, it becomes gold. This is known as crepuscular light, or more poetically, God rays, shafts of sunlight made visible by moisture. And fog is the perfect canvas for this performance. In these early moments, a country road may glow as if backlit by dreams. A tree may be rimmed with light, its branches etched against the golden mist. Even the air seems to shimmer, glowing with possibility. And the fog, so recently heavy and opaque, becomes translucent, not leaving, but transforming. It doesn't vanish all at once. It lifts slowly, releasing the land, but in no rush. The sun warms the ground. The air begins to stir. The droplets dissolve into vapour once again. But while it lasts, fog lit by sunlight is among the gentlest spectacles in the sky. Photographers rise early to find it. Farmers watch it from their porches with coffee in hand. Hikers pause at the edge of ridges to see the golden curtain rise. And those who witness it often grow quiet, because light through fog is not loud, it is reverent. Even in cities it happens, especially where rivers and parks allow the fog to form. The orange of sodium streetlights gives way to amber sun. The buildings begin to glow softly, their outlines appearing piece by piece. In this light, everything looks blessed. Your own skin feels warmer, your breath more visible, your thoughts slower. This is the kind of light that artists chase and poets try to describe, but which only fog in its perfect stillness can shape. It reminds us that light is not always about clarity. Sometimes it's about glow, about showing less, but making what's shown more beautiful. Fog, so often seen as something that hides, becomes the very thing that reveals the quality of light. And the light, in turn, reveals the beauty of fog, not as an obstacle, but as a soft lens through which the world becomes gentle again. So, if you're lucky enough to rise on such a morning, and the sun finds its way through the mist, don't rush to capture it. Just breathe, stand in it, let it warm your thoughts like it warms the air, and if it's only in memory, that's all right too. Close your eyes now. Picture the gold, the softness, the moment the world became light, and let that glow guide you, gently, gratefully, into sleep. Fog has a scent, not one that shouts, not one you can bottle or name, but it's there, soft and fleeting, arriving with the mist and fading as quickly as it comes. It's a scent of memory, of earth and air, of mornings before speech. Walk into a fog and breathe deeply. You'll notice it first as dampness, cool and round, like water before it becomes rain. But stay with it a moment longer, and the scent deepens. You'll catch a note of wet stone, quiet and ancient, the softened sharpness of iron-rich soil, warmed by day, cooled by night, hints of leaves, dew-slicked and aging, wood that holds the echo of rain. In forests, the scent of fog takes on the green breath of moss and bark. In coastal towns, it carries salt and driftwood. In cities, it smells like sidewalk steam, metal railings, and distant smoke. And yet, in every place, the scent of fog shares something in common, something almost sky-like. It's the smell of cloud made touchable. The moment the atmosphere leans close, unlike the perfume of flowers, or the sharpness of ozone before a storm, fog's scent is low and wide. It doesn't strike. It surrounds. You don't find it by sniffing. It finds you when you're still. It's a smell that lives between sensations, between touch and taste, between air and memory. Some say fog smells clean. Others say it smells like dust being washed away. But perhaps fog's scent is more like a tone than a smell, the way a low cello note feels more than sounds. There's science behind this too. When humidity rises, molecules from soil and plants become more volatile. They lift more easily into the air. Fog, dense with water droplets, carries these tiny molecules closer to our noses. It wraps scent in coolness, slows its movement, and holds it close to the ground. That's why smells often feel stronger or sharper on foggy days. Not because there's more of them, but because the air has changed the way they travel. It's as if the fog invites scent to linger, and then, just as quickly, the fog lifts. The scent vanishes. Try to describe it later, and the words fall short. It was earthy, maybe metallic, almost sweet. But in truth, the scent of fog can't be named. Not exactly, because it isn't just chemistry, it's context. It's the smell of breath in winter, of the ground preparing for sleep, of early walks, late thoughts, and in-between moments. Even your own memory shapes it. For some, fog smells like schoolyards in autumn. For others, it's long drives through northern woods. For some, it smells like nothing at all, just the sensation of air made visible. And that, perhaps, is its greatest magic. The scent of fog is the smell of things almost forgotten, returning for a moment, then dissolving again. So breathe in now. Picture the mist outside your window. Let the earth rise gently to meet your senses. Let the sky speak not in thunder, but in scent. And if you can't name what you're smelling, that's all right. It's fog. It's enough to feel it. Let it drift through your memory now. Let it wrap your thoughts. And let yourself, like the mist, dissolve softly into sleep. Fog is made of clouds that stay close to the ground, but its magic lies in something smaller. Droplets. Millions of them. Too small to fall, too heavy to float. So they hover, suspended in the air like a breath that never leaves. Each droplet is a tiny sphere of water, formed when invisible vapor condenses. Most are just 10 to 15 microns across, far smaller than a raindrop, smaller even than the width of a human hair. Yet together, they fill the air with softness. They don't fall like rain because they're held aloft by air itself. The atmosphere, though it seems empty, is always moving, even in stillness. There are tiny vertical currents, quiet turbulence, microscopic rises and dips. These motions are enough to keep the droplets suspended. It's a balance, gravity pulling down, air holding up. Too large and they'd fall. Too small and they'd remain invisible. Fog droplets live at that perfect middle, visible but floating. They scatter light in every direction, giving fog its soft, glowing appearance. Unlike clear air, which allows sharp shadows and strong contrasts, fog blurs everything it touches. The light doesn't move in a straight line. It spreads, it wraps, it glows. That's why fog softens the world, not just visually, but emotionally. This science of suspension is delicate. To form, the air must cool to its dew point, the temperature at which it can no longer hold all its water vapor. When this happens, the excess moisture condenses around aerosols, tiny particles like dust, sea salt, or even pollen. Without these microscopic anchors, the droplets wouldn't form. Water needs a place to begin, and so each droplet in fog is born around a tiny seed, invisible on its own, but essential to the mist. Once formed, the droplets hang together in community, each one influencing the others. They float close, but not so close as to merge. They drift slowly. They move when you move. They make the air feel alive. If you walk through fog and shine a light, you'll see the droplets glimmer in the beam. If you hold out your hand, they'll gather on your skin like a soft spray. If you wait long enough, you may feel your hair grow damp. But even after minutes of walking, you'll never see the droplets fall like rain, because they don't want to fall, they want to linger. There is something poetic about that. Millions of water droplets held in hesitation, not rushing to the ground, not floating away. Just resting, just being. This suspended state makes fog one of the most fragile of weather forms. A gust of wind can disperse it. A degree of warmth can dissolve it. A rising sun can lift it into cloud. And yet, while it lasts, fog transforms the world, with nothing but water, air, and a balance of forces. It teaches us about thresholds, about how the invisible becomes visible, about how small things, suspended together, can create something vast and quiet. So, as you fall asleep tonight, imagine those droplets, countless, weightless, hovering, not falling, not flying, just suspended, like a thought between dreams. Let yourself join them now. Let your breath slow and float there, quietly, peacefully, in the soft science of stillness. Each evening, when the sun dips below the horizon and the sky dims to blue-grey, the earth begins to cool. It doesn't happen suddenly. It's gradual, like a sigh, a gentle release of warmth, day slipping away, molecule by molecule. This quiet process is called radiative cooling, and it is the secret behind one of fog's gentlest forms, radiation fog. As night deepens, the ground sheds the heat it gathered from sunlight. That energy, once stored in soil and stone, in grass and road, begins to escape, radiating upward into the open sky. The surface cools, and so does the air just above it. Now, imagine a calm night, no wind to stir the layers, no clouds to hold the heat in. The sky is clear, still, waiting, and the ground, cooling steadily, becomes cold enough to lower the temperature of the air resting just above it. If the air is moist, even just a little, something magical begins to happen. As the air cools toward its dew point, the temperature at which water vapor turns into liquid, fog begins to form. Not from above, not falling from the sky, but from the surface upward, like a breath drawn slowly across the land. This is radiation fog, a cloud born not of storms, but of stillness. It's delicate. It needs quiet. A single breeze can scatter it. A low cloud layer can prevent it. But when the night is just right, cool, calm, clear, fog forms like silver silk across fields, valleys, and quiet streets. You'll see it in the early morning before the sun returns. It hangs low, close to the ground, rarely climbing trees or rooftops. It lingers in meadows. It gathers in hollows. It paints the bottoms of fences with soft shadow. This kind of fog is common in late autumn and early spring, seasons of contrast, when the days are warm enough for moisture to rise and the nights cool enough to draw it back down. You might wake to find the world covered in it, a blanket of white breath, still and soundless. And just as it came, radiation fog will vanish, softly, when the sun rises again. The earth warms, the air lifts, the droplets evaporate, returning to invisibility. It's important to know that radiation fog is local, almost personal. It forms where conditions allow, not across vast distances, but in gentle pockets, where warmth, moisture, and cooling meet in harmony. In this way, fog becomes a message, a sign that the earth has exhaled, that the night was calm enough to listen, that balance was achieved, if only for a few quiet hours. So, as you fall asleep tonight, imagine the ground beneath you slowly releasing its warmth. Picture the air cooling in response. Picture the moisture condensing, like mist forming on a window pane. Not rushing, not swirling, just appearing, floating, resting. Let your body cool with the earth. Let your thoughts condense into stillness and drift like radiation fog into sleep. Fog doesn't just happen anywhere. It forms where the land allows it and where the land invites it. This relationship between fog and landscape is quiet but deep. It's a partnership, one that plays out each night in valleys, across hillsides, and beside winding rivers. The shape of the land, its topography, decides where fog will sleep. Start with valleys. These low places in the earth are natural cradles. At night, as the ground cools and air begins to chill, heavier cold air sinks downward. Moisture gathers in the lowest points, pooling like water. And if the conditions are right, calm air, clear sky, high humidity, the fog begins to form, tucked neatly between hills. This is why valley towns often wake under blankets of mist, while hilltops remain clear above. Then, there are rivers and streams, which add their own magic. Water bodies release moisture into the air, especially overnight. This moisture increases humidity in the surrounding landscape, feeding the air above and nudging it closer to saturation. That's why fog often clings to riverbanks, forming low along the water's edge and rolling outward into the land. You might see it curling along the bends, like soft breath tracing a memory. Wetlands play a similar role. These damp, low-lying ecosystems are rich with standing water and vegetation, both perfect fog makers. At night, they release moisture upward, feeding the fog, cradling it close to the ground, letting it deepen hour by hour. And then there are hills and ridges, the quiet architects of movement. These higher points guide air. They shape how cold air flows at night, often funneling it downward into basins and bowls. They block wind, creating shelter. And when fog forms in these protected spaces, the hills stand above it like islands in a white sea. Drive a winding road at dawn, and you may pass in and out of fog, crossing ridgelines and dipping into valleys, each turn shaped by the land's subtle hand. Even man-made topography, like urban parks, overpasses, and cutaways in terrain, can create microclimates where fog forms and lingers, held for a while in concrete hollows and quiet corners. Topography isn't just about elevation, it's about shape, about flow, about how air settles and how moisture rests. Fog doesn't float randomly, it follows the contours of the earth, like a liquid that forgets it isn't supposed to be liquid. It slides downhill. It gathers where the land tells it to. It sleeps in the same places, night after night. So when you see fog resting on a field or filling the bottom of a valley, know that the land shaped it, that the hills held it, that the river breathed it, that the contours of the earth made space for softness. Topography, in this way, becomes a kind of hospitality, a bed for fog to sleep in, a silence sculpted from soil and stone. Let your mind follow the curves now, the slope of a hillside, the gentle dip of a valley, the still surface of a pond, and let yourself, like the fog, find a place to settle, a shape that holds you, a landscape of rest. There is a kind of quiet that exists only when fog meets snow. It's not just silence, but seamlessness, a world where boundaries vanish, where ground and sky become one, where white hovers above and white rests below. And in between, you walk through a dream. When fog settles over a snow-covered landscape, it does not simply float above it, it joins it. The air becomes part of the ground. The snow becomes part of the sky, and your footsteps, if you dare to take them, vanish almost instantly behind you. This is not a blizzard. There is no falling snow, only what has already fallen, still, pristine, and the fog rising to meet it. The albedo, or reflectivity, of snow is high. It bounces light upward, even in low conditions. And when fog drifts in, it catches that light, scatters it, turning the world into a glowing, pale void. Streetlights bloom like distant suns. Trees appear without trunks, their branches suspended in air. A fence post fades into nothing after the first few rails. Everything is soft. Everything is dreamlike. And because snow muffles sound and fog blurs it, your ears adjust to a new kind of quiet. Footsteps are padded. Voices are swallowed. The wind itself seems reluctant to speak. In these conditions, you may lose your sense of scale. How far is that building? That tree? That light? You begin to feel your way forward, not with touch, but with breath, with stillness. You don't look for landmarks. You look for softness. You look for light. Freezing fog often accompanies this kind of scene, when the temperature is below freezing and moisture hangs suspended in the air. Fog droplets can crystallize on contact. Rime forms, delicate, feathery ice that coats every surface. Branches become white lace, fences turn into filigree. Even spiderwebs look spun from frost. The snow beneath your feet may be untouched, no melt, no tracks, just a smooth sheet of white. The fog above it hovers like breath, not quite lifting, not quite falling. And in this rare union, the landscape enters a kind of pause. No shadows, no colour, no distance, just softness everywhere. Photographers and poets have long been drawn to this meeting, fog and snow, because it strips away distraction. It leaves only mood, a purity of atmosphere, a world in grayscale, yet full of feeling. Even the sun, if it appears, arrives not with strength, but with glow, filtered through fog, reflecting off snow, making everything shine with diffused gold. But more often, it remains dimmed, a pale disk behind mist, and the world continues on, wrapped in white. If you find yourself in such a moment, where snow rests underfoot and fog curls around your breath, let yourself be still. Let the sky and ground merge around you. Let the quiet settle in your chest. Let your thoughts become as light as air and as soft as snow. And know that, in this meeting, this delicate crossing of fog and frost, the world has decided to rest completely. So can you. Close your eyes, feel the weightlessness of whiteness, and fall gently into the blank canvas of sleep. When the day ends and night begins, fog sometimes draws the curtain, not a loud closing, not a final act, but a soft descent, like velvet pulled slowly across the stage of the world. This is fog as a closing gesture, a pause, a hush, a reminder that even the sky knows how to end the day with stillness. You may feel it before you see it, that subtle cooling of the air, that gathering hush in the trees. Lights begin to blur, outlines begin to soften, and then the curtain falls. The fog arrives. It doesn't race in. It spreads from field to field, road to rooftop. It fills spaces left by light. It blurs the edges of buildings, fences, faces. The world becomes a stage lit only by memory. And just like that, the performance of the day is done. The streets quiet, the windows dim. Even the birds lower their songs. You might look out your window and see the familiar turned unfamiliar. The trees, you know, turned into silhouettes. The hills beyond your house vanished entirely. The world has not disappeared. It has simply stepped back. In cities, the fog catches the glow of lamps. It scatters light like golden dust. In forests, it wraps the trees in whispers. In neighborhoods, it turns driveways into winding paths that seem to lead nowhere and everywhere. And in the stillness, you begin to notice something. The curtain doesn't separate you from the world. It draws you closer to it. By narrowing your view, fog invites you to focus on what's near. The sound of your breath, the warmth of your blanket, the faint rustle outside the window. There is no rush now, no schedule. The curtain has been drawn, the audience has left, and you, like the land, are free to rest. In many ways, fog is the atmosphere's way of saying, enough for today, enough brightness, enough motion, enough clarity. Let things blur now, let the scene fade. In this way, fog teaches us about closure, but gently. It doesn't slam the door, it dims the lights, it doesn't silence the world, it mutes it, and then, like all good curtains, it waits. Not for applause, but for dawn, because fog doesn't end the story, it simply creates space between chapters. And in that space, you are free to sleep. So, as you listen now, imagine the curtain falling outside your window, street by street, tree by tree, cloud by cloud. The sky has drawn its breath, the fog has settled, and all that remains is quiet. Let yourself rest behind the veil. Let the world fade into softness, and sleep as the fog would, slowly, quietly, completely. And as our journey winds down, I hope the quiet mystery of fog has brought you a sense of peace, a gentle softness to drift you towards sleep, like a cloud settling low over the landscape of your thoughts. If you've enjoyed this slow weather journey, feel free to like or subscribe, but only if the mood moves you, and only when you're ready. There's no pressure here, no hurry, no expectation. You don't need to do anything else now. Let your thoughts drift, like mist across a meadow. Let the weight of the day slip quietly away. Let your breath slow, smooth and steady, like fog rising at twilight. You've learned enough. You've wandered far enough. You can rest now. Snuggle in, unwind, sink into the softness. Let the fog close gently around you, like a lullaby made of sky and stillness. Good night now. Peaceful dreams, calm skies to you. Until next time.